Hi everyone, and welcome to my 2017 goals recap and also my reading goals for 2018. I don't think I actually did a video in 2018 about my goals for the year, which is fine because they were pretty much similar to what I had in 2016. So my goal for 2017 was to read overall of 100 books. This was my goal that I set as a challenge on Goodreads page, and I did exceed that goal. According to Goodreads, I read 107 books. However, I still kept a list of all the books that I read, as well as audiobooks, and this number for some reason is slightly different. I don't know why, but in my notebook I have 105 books, and I also know that recently, after I wrote down the number of 107, I added another book which I finished in 2017, so it should be 108. I don't know, but I just know that I read more than 100. Also, another book that I know for a fact that I read last year, and that was Shadow and Bone. It's somewhere there on my shelf by Leigh Bardugo. It's, for whatever reason, not showing up on the list at Goodreads. No idea. So let's do a very quick recap. My goal was to read 100 books, and checkmark, I did that. Another goal was to read 10 plays or scripts, and I read exactly 10. Then I had a goal of to listen to 20 audiobooks, and I did not complete that because I listened to only 15. Then I had two more goals, which I both failed at, and that was read one book in German and read one book in French. So if you don't know, I can speak German. I'm sorry, I hesitated because my German really sucks, but I read much better than I speak, believe me. So I can technically read a very simple book in German, and this was my goal for last year. As for French, I'm still a beginner, I'm still learning French, but I also wanted to read at least like a kid's book, where my goal was to read The Little Prince. However, I did not do that, and yeah. If we look at all the stats for 2017, I read 107 books. Out of those, 32 were novels, 7 were novellas or short stories, 40 were graphic novels or comics, 12 were advanced readers' copies, 3 books were rereads, 10 were the plays, and 15 were audiobooks. So basically similar to 2016, I read a lot of graphic novels and comics, which is great. However, I did not read as many novels per se as I would like to. So for this year, I'm changing my goals slightly and not just setting up a definite one number of books that I want to read, but also some numbers for other categories. So for 2018, I set a goal of 100 books, but among those 100 books, I would like to listen to 20 audiobooks, read 20 scripts or plays, and also read at least 30 adult books, which means that it should be pretty achievable since I read 32 last year, but I do want to read more adult books. I was reading primarily YA last year, and there is nothing wrong with that since it's a relatively new genre to me. However, I still want to read a lot of adult books because I have a lot of them, and there are some that I've been dying to read for years but been neglecting to, so this is one of my goals. I'm also keeping those two goals to read one book in German and to read one book in French. Hopefully this will be the year when it actually happens. I obviously do not plan to read something very complicated in either of those languages, but I do want to read at least something very small. And I do have some children's books in French, so should be achievable, right? Besides setting goals for 2018, I created reading challenges for myself just to spice up things a bit and to make myself more accountable. And the first goal is to read 5 books owned for every 1 book purchased. And I really want to stick to this one because it's so easy to get away with purchasing books, especially when they're on sale, but it's like a black hole, honestly. I've been purchasing books non-stop in 2016 and 2017, especially since starting this channel, but I have to pace myself. It's getting out of hand. So this challenge is to read 5 books I already own for each one purchased, means that if I purchase 5 books this year, I'll have to read at least 25 I own. Next challenge is to read 1 Kindle book for 1 purchased. And I've been like binge buying Kindle books, and I think I'm fairly good with reading them right on spot. However, it still happens when they keep accumulating, and I want to kind of get rid of that as well. So one book read for one book purchased on my Kindle. Next, I would like to reduce my to be read shelf on Goodreads page, and as I'm filming this, or rather when I made a note in my notebook, I had over 1,000 books marked as to be read on Goodreads, which is kind of crazy because most probably at least half of them are the ones that I will never read, or just the ones that I kind of wanted to remind myself of, and I marked them as to be read. But let's be honest, that's a very big number. Same goes for my on hold shelf. So as I was writing this down, I had 28 books on hold on Goodreads, which means those were the books that I started reading. For some reason I had to set aside. Maybe I was not really enjoying them, but I have to do something with them, right? If I'm not going to finish them, I really need to DNF them. If I am going to finish them, I have to read them. Next challenge is to reduce holds at the library. Last year, it was a disaster because I would have 100 books, which is the maximum you can have on hold at the library, and I would check out like 20 books at the same time, just because you would put something on hold, then it gets transferred, then it gets delivered, and then you go pick it up, and then 3 weeks later you just extend it, and it just became such a mess, and it was just basically annoying me and giving me anxiety for no reason. So I have to deal with that as well, and be mindful of what I put on hold at the library. Next challenge is to unhold 50 books, or at least 50 books. I already have some books that I really want to get rid of. For example, The Fault in Our Stars. I never want to have this book on my shelves ever again. I have a specific place on my shelves where I keep all of those books that I want to unhaul. Some of them are second copies, and some of them are just the books that I know I do not want to ever read again, and I don't want to keep them. So here's that. Next two challenges are very similar because I want to read 10 books which were released in 2017 and 10 books that will be released in 2018. It's just something to keep myself up to date with recent releases, not just read something that came out 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. Just a little challenge, should not be that difficult. Next challenge is to finish 5 trilogies or 5 series, maybe not necessarily trilogies, might be duologies as well, but just finish them. I started several trilogies or series last year. For example, the one of like a Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I just read one book, the first book in the trilogy. I also listened to as an audiobook to Magonia and never finished the second book. There was another book that I read and also purchased 2 other books in the series but never finished them. So I really want to get on that this year. Next challenge is to read all mangas and all graphic novels that I own, which should be a fun challenge because I only ever buy graphic novels or a manga that I absolutely love and I want to read more than once. So it shouldn't be such a big deal, but it's also one of those things that would keep me more accountable and more conscientious of what books I buy and whether I enjoy them or not and whether I plan to reread them. So yeah. Next challenge is to reread all stories of Sherlock Holmes, and I have already started on that one because I'm listening to that as an audiobook. There is a complete collection of Sherlock Holmes stories released in 2017 by Audible, and it is read by Stephen Fry, so I'm doing that, really enjoying it. I will not do it all in 1 month just because it's not possible. There are so many stories, but hopefully we'll do it throughout the year. Next, I would like to reread The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas because I have not read that book in 2 years, I think, and long overdue for another reread. Next two challenges are the ones that I hoped to do last year but kind of got sidetracked by all of those YA books that I got, and that is to read, or rather reread, 2 of my favorite authors. One is Catherine Kurtz, and I really wanted to reread the first trilogy, The Darnay Rising, and I even tried to do a read-along with Sam from Sans Nonsense. I gave her the first 3 books in the series as a gift for her birthday last April, and I really wanted to read them all together, but she only read the first book and I got stuck on Introduction, which is ridiculous. I used to love those books as a kid. It's one of my favorite trilogies. It is what got me into fantasy, and it is one of those books that I mentioned in my most unpopular or very unpopular, something unpopular fantasy books or underappreciated fantasy books. That was one of my very first videos on this channel, and still still accumulating so many views. Oh my god, I cannot even believe that. But yeah, I do want to reread that, at least that first trilogy. And following that challenge is to reread books by Lynn Llewellyn, who's another my all-time favorite fantasy author. At least I want to read the first 2 books in the series, which can be read as a standalone duology. I'm not even sure when I will have time to read the rest books in the series. I know that unfortunately Lynn Llewellyn does not write anymore. Well, maybe she does, but she doesn't publish anything. And those books, they meant and still do mean so much to me that I don't really want to finish the series. I read 4 books, but there are, I believe, 6 books altogether, and I think I haven't read the last 2, but I don't even know how to read them, because it would mean that this will end for me, and I don't think I will ever be ready for that. But anyway, I would really like to read the first 2 books in the series this year. Next challenge is the one that should help me read more books that I already own, and that is to read all of the plays that I own. I went on a quiet binge last year and not only received some books from Playwrights Canada Press, for which I'm internally grateful, but I also bought a lot of plays myself. So my goal for this year is to read everything, like scripts and plays and whatnots that I own. That's quite a few, but there are also plays, and they usually pretty short. Hopefully I'll do it. And the last challenge is to listen to 10 audiobooks in my Audible library. If you don't know, I'm an avid Audible user. I've been using Audible for over 10 years, so I registered in 2006. It was June, I believe, and I did that because I learned that first 3 books by Lynn Llewellyn came out as audiobooks, and I was ready to pay any money to get those books. So this is what happened. I became Audible member way before Audible was purchased by Amazon, and I've been using Audible ever since I do purchase. I have a membership and I receive credits every single month. They do accumulate, and sometimes I don't have time to listen to a lot of audiobooks. I mean, I do listen to them, however, I just purchase them way quicker than I listen to them. So my goal for this year is to listen to 10 audiobooks that I already have in my library. Hopefully this will help me get through some of those. Okay, this is it. This is my recap of 2017 and all of my reading goals for 2018. I decided this year that I will be doing monthly TBRs as well as monthly wrap-ups, and just by keeping those challenges and trying to read more books that I already own, hopefully this will kind of spice up my reading. Last year I did very well at the beginning of the year, and then I kind of all went downhill. Cannot really explain why, maybe just because my year was very hectic. That's why there was a lot of travel, there was a lot of other stuff happening, and I just feel that I was really pushing to get to my reading goal, but I was just jumping all over the place. I was starting new series, never finishing them. I was trying new books, then I was never like reading sequels, and because of that, it's just my reading was so uneven. But anyway, hopefully this will help me accomplish my goals and you'll keep me accountable. Please let me know down below if you have any questions or comments and what is your reading goal for this year. My goal is definitely to reduce the number of books that I already own, to get less books this year, and to read more books that I already have. So these are my overall goals, but I thought that creating specific challenges would be more interesting. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye! Besides those goals,